My name is Monika Schmuck. I am the manager of sustainability at New England Aquarium.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. All right, y'all, so as you know, we are now headed into our third episode in a row from the one and only New England Aquarium. And this time, we are headed away from the aquarium and back to Quincy, Massachusetts, where there's an offsite facility that does some really cool stuff. And you've already heard about, basically, the way this is broken down is you basically heard about the first half of this warehouse turned into cool offsite facility, which is the sea turtle rescue that you heard about 2 weeks ago. But now you're going to hear about the back half of the facility, which, there's just some really cool stuff that goes on there. And this was stuff that I didn't really know much about when it got into interview time here. As you'll hear me say early on, I'm kind of like, I don't know about any of this, so just tell me neat things. And fortunately, my guest, Monika, tells me neat things. As a matter of fact, I think this is one of those episodes that answers how a lot of things happen that you maybe have wondered about, or honestly, maybe haven't even taken the time to wonder about. But as you hear things come up, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, how does that work? And then you're going to find out, and you're going to be like, oh, that's how that works. I'm basing this entirely off the fact that that's exactly what this interview was for me. So I'm really excited to get you to that. But before we do, a couple of quick things. Make sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss any of these Tuesday interview episodes or Friday Zoo News episodes. This week, we'll actually be returning to normal Zoo News after 2 weeks of conference recaps. I'm sure some of you will be very excited about that. And then, of course, make sure you're following along at Rossifari on the socials, at Rossifari Pod on TikTok. And if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. And so with all of that said, it's time to head back to Quincy, Massachusetts, and learn about some fun new stuff with my incredible guest, Monika. Enjoy.
We are currently in the Quincy Animal Care Center, which is the New England Aquarium's offsite facility.
And one of the things that I have learned is that it is definitely Quincy.
Yes.
And not Quincy. I was told that is very important.
I think if you live around here, it's Quincy.
Yes.
We used to actually name some of our tanks QNZ. So it kind of, if you think about QNZ, it's like Quincy.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
So this place is incredibly important, and you're going to explain why and all of that. But one of the things that is so amazing to me, and it's in the same location as the Sea Turtle Hospital that people have just heard about.
Yes.
It's like a warehouse.
Yes, very much.
But it's so much more and different than that. And so I guess right off the bat, one of the things that I would love for you to talk to me about is how much you have to adapt to that and what effect that has, what making this place was like.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yes. We moved into this building in 2010. And I was actually one of the first aquarists to be hired here. So I was very involved in the build out, which is amazing. We did a lot of plumbing projects, a lot of construction, and you really saw it built up from the beginning. But yeah, it's a lot of challenges. You basically have to build out everything that's here, all of the tanks, the water. We have to bring in specifically and clean it up to use it. And then we have to clean it up even more to put it back out into the Fort River. So that's very specific to this facility. And then obviously, like you said, it's a warehouse. So in the summer, it gets extremely hot. in the winter, it gets really cold. We do have heaters, but we don't have air conditioning. We just have fans. So if something's out on the floor and not in an air-conditioned room, you really have to prepare for temperature swings. So either you're sizing up the chillers or the heaters and just being really cognizant of the swings of temperatures every day.
Makes sense. That's very cool. So what exactly is it that y'all do here? Like broad overview. I know there's a lot, obviously.
Yes.
But for those listening, what are we here talking about?
So we have mostly large holding tanks for some of our large elasmobranchs, so sharks and rays. And so we hold those animals off exhibit if we need to for any reason. We have a large pelagic fish that we need to hold either for breeding purposes or for quarantine. And then we also have a lot of small enclosures that we use for quarantine. So any animal that's new to the aquarium, we bring in and we hold for quarantine purposes just to make sure there's no parasites before they move on to exhibit. And then we also have our larval fish program here. So we have a lot of brood stock, which are the parents of our breeding program. And then we have our live foods cultures and all of our larval fish grow out.
Very cool. And I know we're going to spend more time talking about that in a minute.
Yes.
But let's talk quarantine for just a moment, because
Sure.
I'm sure that everyone who's listening, we've talked about quarantine a lot on the podcast.
Yes.
People have an understanding of what that is. But why is it here? And honestly, one of the things that I'm curious about is just like New England Aquarium is in Boston.
Yes.
We're in Quincy.
Yes.
They are not the same place. They're
Yes.
close, but I also know what Boston traffic is like. And so I'm wondering, why does it make sense to have quarantine out here as opposed to at the main facility?
Right. We used to. And if you've ever been behind the scenes in Boston, you know that the exhibit tanks are pretty much 2 feet, 3 feet away from a lot of the holding tanks.
Gotcha.
And all you need is a little splash of water and you have a bunch of parasites in your exhibit. So we decided that we needed an offsite holding facility. When we renovated our giant ocean tank, we had to bring all of the animals to one place. So we planned, and then we knew the aquarium was moving in that direction anyway, because it just wasn't feasible to hold quarantine animals that close to our exhibits. And we just needed more space. So we ended up coming to Quincy. Initially, the ferry did run from the end of our wharf here, but the MBTA decided to move away from that site after they had a storm. So we're still close to the Hingham Ferry, which is nice. So folks can go back and forth for meetings or whatever. But we also have our lovely box truck that transports animals back and forth to the main building. And we also have a transit van that we can box animals up and put in there. So,
all right, very cool. That's the more I learn about how much animals move between facilities and like offsite and on-site facilities at places and stuff, the more I'm just like, now I'm sitting in traffic and I'm like, I wonder if there's like a kangaroo in the truck next to me.
Yes. Yep.
You just never know.
Yeah. We've had people get pretty mad at us on the highway for water spewing out of our truck onto their car. Yeah. Because it's salt water, It's not ideal for vehicles, but it's like, we can't help it.
That's really funny. Yeah, that's fascinating. It must be quite the effort to load up a vehicle with. I mean, I know what it's like. Like I have some pet herps, and when we move them, just the terrariums, it can be challenging.
Yes,
and that's not even water.
Yes. Animals in water are very hard to move, and obviously water is very heavy. So you have to take that into account especially in a box truck, when it has a certain payload. So we're all very in tune with that, especially in Quincy. We've rented many Penske trucks as well, and been able to transport animals long distances. And it's pretty, it takes a lot of planning.
Yeah, I would imagine so. So you had mentioned that you have an interesting system here with the saltwater coming in and then going out, which does sound very unique. I don't think I've heard anything like that anywhere I've been yet. So can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yes. So we are right next to the Fore River. which is actually sort of a brackish river.
Okay.
But it does stay around 30 parts per thousand for salinity. So it's pretty ideal for us. We bring in salt water every day. And we have 2 big vessels on the side of our facility that we fill up, our mechanical system operator. They fill those up, and then it goes through basically bag filters, ozone, protein skimmer. And then we're able to use that water throughout the whole facility. So it's pumped through. But we obviously have a very specific amount of water that we can use. And then at the end of the day, it all collects down the floor drains or into the vessels. And we clean that up really good, goes through carbon and all this stuff. And then it's put back out into the Fort River.
Wow. Now I'm curious, is it, so the river is brackish.
Yes.
And so do you have to add any additional salt to make it salt water for your saltwater animals?
Right. We usually don't.
Wow. Okay.
Usually it's enough because we do not, our systems are technically closed systems. So we only use enough water to do water changes or maintain water quality. And so usually our systems are pretty high salinity, like 35 parts per thousand. So adding 30 parts per thousand doesn't matter too much. For smaller systems, when we get into the spring and we have a lot of fresh water from the rain, it can get down to like 14 parts per thousand. And in that time, we try to use less water if we can. And then if we do need to use it for smaller systems, we do add salt.
Okay, interesting.
Yep.
And then when you put it back out, you don't have to desalinize or anything because you haven't changed it. So that's wow.
Yeah, and we have very strict EPA permits. So we collect discharge water regularly, send in samples. So yeah, we have to be really careful about what we put back out into the to the river. But yeah, it's very clean water.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
This might seem like a weird question. It might be a weird question. I don't know. But does that have any positive impact on the water? Like when it goes back out, like since it's coming out filtered, is that, helping to clean the river, or is it such a small amount that it's a drop in the bucket?
I'm sure it's probably helping a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, because the Fort River is pretty tidal. So it does have tidal flushes. So I'm sure it's like slightly doing our part to clean up the water.
I mean, better than polluting it more.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, that works. Very cool.
Yeah.
I like that. So, all right, let's talk about the propagation stuff, the birth, all of the, as you can tell. I have learned a lot about animals over the last couple of years, but this is something I know nothing about. I misidentified a large shrimp as a lobster. So we are in the area that I am wildly uninformed about.
That's
so
okay.
Please run with this. Tell me things, teach me things.
Yep.
And if I don't have a lot of great questions or if I'm not interrupting, it's not because I'm not interested. It's because I don't know. So please educate me. You're the expert.
Sounds good. Yeah. So our breeding program, we have a bunch of broodstock animals, which are the parents of our fishes that we breed. And so we hold the broodstock in very specific systems to make them super happy and really well fed animals. We give them specific lighting, specific temperatures and habitat even. And we basically make it so comfortable for them that they just keep spawning. And that's the idea. Some animals spawn eggs onto habitat or onto substrate like sand. Other animals put their eggs out into the water column and we collect them that way. So there's a bunch of different strategies as to how you're collecting the eggs, depending on what type of fish it is. And then in addition to that, we incubate the eggs. So most fish aren't like people, so they don't really take care of their young at all.
To be fair, I know some people that that's besides the point anyway. So go ahead.
They usually just put them out into the water column and they fly away with the tides and the currents. And so our job is to basically try to create that environment where there's a lot of water movement and helping with the incubation. And then once the eggs hatch, we move them into larval rearing tanks, which is very specific for water quality and lighting. Their lights are on 24/7 so that they eat all the time. They always have food availability. And basically, you just try to rear them. Some of the species we've gotten really good at, some are still really hard, and we're still working through it. And then once they get big, we move them into larger tanks so they keep growing. And then for certain species, we actually box them up and ship them to other AZA institutions.
Okay, so I have so many questions, but that's a great overview. But my first one is, why?
Yes. So the aquarium has always dabbled in larval rearing projects behind the scenes over the years. And we had a few instances where we were really trying to rear a specific species for our giant ocean tank. And we collected eggs from the giant ocean tank and grew them up. And it ended up being a completely different species than we thought. The eggs had been laid on the sand. And when we collected them, they were mixed in with a different species of egg. And that species won out in the rearing tub. And so we really decided that we wanted to focus on raising animals for our exhibits, and then eventually now for other people's exhibits. But we needed to focus on very specific species that made sense for us. So that's why we decided to move this program down here and really start in earnest trying to rear very specific animals.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And you said that you're now sending them out to other AZA institutions and stuff.
Yes.
So, we talk on here a lot about SSPs.
Yes.
And I assume that these are more species that are not under an SSP,
Correct.
but just are like individual species that facilities want to have.
Right.
And this is a safe, good way to do that?
Yes. So a lot of the fish that we focus on are large schools. So like the look downs and the smallmouth grunts, we have 200 animals in our giant ocean tank that make a giant school of fish. And it makes a huge impact on the exhibit and kind of shows the schooling behaviors. And that in turn makes our giant ocean tank 70% aquacultured, which is amazing for the house. That's a 200,000 gallon exhibit. So for other institutions, they want that impact on their exhibits. They don't want to take 200 smallmouth grunts out of the wild. They'd like to have them reared in-house and be aquacultured. I think that's where everybody is sort of moving to.
That's awesome. I do quite like that. Yeah. What exactly do you mean when you use the term aquaculture?
So aquacultured is when you are creating an environment that fish and eggs need to live. You're simulating their wild rearing environment and growing them up yourself. It's basically like farming, but for fish.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Very cool. So basically you need a naturalistic environment. You need to be nailing it.
Yes.
And at that point, then they will live natural lives, including, breeding and such.
Right.
Okay,
exactly.
that makes sense. Cool. I like that. I did not know that term. Like I said, this is an area I'm very not well versed in.
Yes.
So we went on a little tour of the facility before we sat down here. And you mentioned certain things, how each species has very specific things that it needs and very specific steps.
Yes.
And all of them were very fascinating and very specific, but also just very very small containers with lots of life in it, because these are small eggs and small animals and stuff. So I would love if you could paint a picture, maybe even just pick one of the species and talk through each step and what each, starting with the broodstock.
Yep.
Going all the way through, take my listeners through what each step is like, looks wise and experience wise for the animals.
Okay. So our copper sweepers is a sort of a cave dwelling, reef dwelling fish in the Caribbean. And we have that broodstock in a couple 100 gallon exhibit. And it has a center standpipe that collects their eggs. They put their eggs out into the water column every day. And the eggs go down the pipe and into our egg collector that's connected to the system.
How do they know to do that? I know they don't literally know, but how do eggs go that way? Is it a filtration thing?
Yes,
okay.
A flow.
Okay.
Most eggs, if we keep the system around 35 parts per thousand for salinity, the eggs actually float.
Oh.
And we use surface skimming, so the water goes down off of the surface. So it, in theory, would collect all the eggs.
That makes sense. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
And then we scoop the eggs into cones. So we have these cones with water bubbling in them, and it sort of circulates the eggs overnight. They have a little light on them, and basically you're just trying to keep them warm and moving so that they don't stick together and get not enough oxygen. And then the next day we come in, the larvae are hatched. So we take the cone into our culture room and we pour the larvae slowly into their black round tubs that have 24-hour light and air and then water. And so basically they just circulate around in the tank. We add plankton. So we add rotifers and copepods and algae to their tub. And basically they just eat whatever they want. And then we wait. And then every day we take care of them. We make sure the tank is clean. We add more food on a regular basis. We make sure their lighting is good. Make sure the air is circulating them enough around the tank. And then usually around 60 days later, they are big enough for us to move them to their next holding tank, which is very similar, but it's a little bit of a higher flow, a little bit of a different food item, bigger food, and then slowly just bump them up until they're big enough for us to either put on exhibit or to ship out.
Okay, cool. Very cool. I find myself questioning like why you have to go through all those steps. Just because, I mean, I'm thinking about it just in terms of like, if the fish are going through this in the wild, first of all, I assume there isn't 24-hour lighting because days and nights.
Right.
And then like I would assume they're not moving from like classroom to classroom like you're talking about here. Right. So why is this more effective? And I guess what is it like in the wild versus this? You know what I mean?
Right. Well, in theory, for say reef fish, each reef fish usually hangs around the same reef. So they find their home, they settle, and that's where they live. So the whole like biological need for the fish is to, when they spawn, the eggs should be carried away from where they live to prevent inbreeding, essentially, naturally. So they get carried away in the ocean currents. And to be honest, we're not really sure what happens with the eggs.
Yeah, makes sense.
So we try to replicate the flow part of things to keep them moving. But yes, as you said, the lights aren't on all the time. But usually to raise animals in captivity, you need to feed them a lot. They, in the wild, have all different types of plankton to eat. And here we're trying to artificially create that. And we can only do so much.
Right.
So we pick a very good species that we know for copepods, say, that we know that they will eat. It's very small. The baby copepods are basically so small that the larvae are very quick to eat them. And they're really nutritious. So the copepods take in the algae and that increases their fatty acid profile, which then the larvae need. And we really want them to eat as much as possible so that they can sustain in this artificial environment. So that's why we keep the lights on 24/7. Fish are using their eyes to eat and find their food. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. That's actually
as
really
they get
cool.
older, we don't do that. They're on a normal schedule.
Gotcha. No, that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Though. That's an interesting, I'd love to be like inside the head of the person who figured that out and was like, they're not eating enough. Well, they eat when the lights are on. What if we just leave the lights on?
Right.
They're not sleeping in the dark anyway.
Right.
Oh, hey, look at this.
Right.
And that's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. That's very interesting.
And there are some parts of the tank that aren't as bright as the others. And that's one of the things that you need for specific species is a darker area that they can move into. And you do kind of see that. They'll move in between the lighter areas and the darker areas, depending on when the food is coming into the tank and how much is available.
I'm always fascinated by when and how animals in human care sometimes thrive the best in ways that you wouldn't expect. leaving the lights on 24/7 for fish that wouldn't be in 24-hour light.
Right.
Seems surprising. I was talking once to a facility that's had great success breeding sloths. And they were telling me that what they do is they take their breeding sloths off exhibit, which is they have this beautiful naturalistic exhibit, trees. And, you know, if you were in there, you would think you were in a forest. Even the ground is complete like dirt and stuff, right? Like literally replicating the exact environment that sloths live in.
Yep.
And they weren't breeding in it.
Yep.
So they take them to a behind the scenes area where each one of them has a travel kennel, like a dog kennel type thing, with a branch going out and a branch down to the ground in case they have to poop.
Yep.
And they mate like crazy. They go from sloths to rabbits. And it's like, why?
Right.
Why would you think, who even thought of that?
Right.
But then also why, I'm so curious, and no one there knows, they haven't figured out yet why that is so successful.
Right.
But you put two sloths back there and you're getting a baby. But if you leave them out in the forest, in the exact place where they live, in every way, the temperature, the humidity, it's all perfect, right?
Yep.
One of the best sloth exhibits I've ever seen.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, no, thank you. And they eat well, they otherwise seem fine. But, you know, I find that fascinating.
Right. Maybe they're overwhelmed with how awesome it is. And they're like, nah, I'm all set.
I'm so happy. I don't need to mate. I'm good. Yeah. Yeah. You put them in the back room. They're like, well, I guess we got nothing else to do. I don't know. Hey, you come here.
Right. Exactly.
It's really fascinating.
Yes.
Me. Yeah. Very cool. So, does all of this work that you're doing help advance scientific knowledge or conservation efforts or anything like that?
Of course. A lot of our fish that we're rearing have never been done before. So we've actually reared 5 species that have never been reared. And we've been able to document that in pictures and information. And we are working on protocols or like some sort of like document that folks can reference to be able to replicate it. And also just to remember what we did for the next time.
Also good. Yes.
And so a lot of that is exciting because there are so many different species of fish that it's nearly impossible to know what every fish would be like to rearing, like what their eggs look like, to what they would need to eat, to what kind of environment is ideal for them, because we don't know what happens with the eggs and the larvae most of the time.
They should make really tiny trackers and try and find out.
Yeah, exactly. So there's people doing studies like that. And yeah, so I think being able to understand the biology behind how the fish grows from an egg kind of helps our understanding of them on the reef and in the wild. So we kind of understand like, oh, these animals actually need to float around in the water column and then find a different reef section. But if there are no more reef sections, then where are they going to go? They're not going to have anywhere to settle out. So it is sort of an interesting aspect of that to be able to know sort of what happens with them or what they need in order to grow. And then on top of that, we have a lot of grants that we're working on. We have a NOAA Sea grant right now that's working towards creating a lot of education around aquaculture and in aquaculture in public aquariums. And it's definitely a different type of aquaculture than you would see for, say, seafood. It's the same concept, but it's our job is to take care of animals and not create food. So it's a little bit of a different vibe here. So we're working on that as well. And we have a lot of different aquariums working on different species. So trying to broaden our horizons in that way.
Very cool. Nice. Yeah. Now I'm curious, how did you get here? You are in a very weird position, if I may say so.
Yes.
You're just here overseeing, fish breeding and rearing. And so what is your crazy life story? Did you always know that you wanted to play with tiny eggs? What was your journey?
It's funny because my parents and I talk to my parents now, and they knew I always loved tiny things, like anything tiny. I was obsessed with it. I loved like Polly Pockets and things like that.
Okay, so I have to tell you this just as a bonding moment. Okay, me too. Loved Micro Machines.
They're the best.
Had a set of little Batman vehicles that were like off-brand Micro Machines.
See?
That were my favorite toy. I lost them somewhere, and about a couple months ago, I found the same set at like a retro store and bought it. It was like $30, and I was like, "Yep, I need this in my life again."
Exactly.
I used to be jealous of the fact that girls had Polly Pockets, and there was no like X-Men version of that because I wasn't digging the Polly Pockets.
Right,
but,
they were very pink and girly.
Yeah. But I used to be jealous of that, so I'm actually really entertained by that fact because I've always liked small things myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that coupled with I went to University of New Hampshire for marine and freshwater biology. And I actually worked in a lab that looked at freshwater plankton. So we have a key that you can use to key them out if you collect them. And they were looking at the different plankton to see if they could help with like harmful algal blooms in the lakes in New Hampshire. And so I was sort of in that algae copepod realm there. And then when I got my internship at the aquarium after I graduated college, because I didn't have my stuff together to do it during college, I was like, wow, I didn't realize this was a job that I could do with my degree. I was working in the tropical gallery, and I was like, I'm just going to keep volunteering until they hire me. And that's basically what I did. I did work in a zebrafish lab for a while. So we grew zebrafish from eggs for research studies. Zebrafish are actually strangely very close to humans when they're an embryo.
Weird.
Yes.
Very weird.
So they do a lot of studies, and they have a very clear egg. So they can do a lot of studies on them. So that was sort of like how it happened. And then I was working down here, and like I said, we were mostly quarantined and holding. So I was doing a lot of diving and working with new fish that came in, and then just sort of gravitated towards the larval rearing side of things. So here I am.
That's so interesting to me. The fact that you actually have experience working in galleries and diving and with quarantine animals and stuff. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but New England Aquarium has some pretty cool animals like penguins and pinnipeds and, sea turtles, myrtle. And you were there and you were working in and around this stuff. And you were like, you know what I want? I want the Polly Pockets of the fish world.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Do you ever stop and wonder what is it that made me want to do that instead of hang out with Myrtle for a living? No, that's just who you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do. Don't get me wrong. I do love diving in the GOT and scratching Myrtle. She loves her back scratched, and that's always fun. But she's also a little intimidating when she swims at you and she sees you with lettuce. So it's like, get away. You're so huge. But she's really a giant puppy. But yeah, don't get me wrong. I still like to do that. But
I'm now having this mental image of you living in a very tiny house with a very small husband and just tiny children that as they grow up, you're like, no, just everything must be very small. You only have chihuahuas
That's
or
right.
Yorkies.
Right. My house is tiny, but my husband isn't. So that's funny.
Oh, I am entertained by that. That's really cool. I love how everyone has their passion. Yes. Whatever it may be. And I've been on this weird little quest is too strong of a word, but I love when I talk to people, for the podcast and in my own world and analyzing myself, trying to figure out what it is that draws you to certain things.
Right.
And I don't think you can. I think we're just hardwired to be who we are.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I tell people I have 4 favorite animals, and 2 of them are red pandas and sea turtles, which are so basic, right? Everybody loves red pandas and everybody loves sea turtles. But the other 2 are tree kangaroos and binturongs, which most people don't even know exist, you know? And I can't explain why. And I've tried to. And yesterday I was at Roger Williams Park Zoo, and I got to hang out with both the tree kangaroos and the binturongs. It was a very good day.
That's cool.
And I I was literally spending time like thinking, like as I'm having these internal emotions, what is it that causes me to, why am I enjoying this so much more than like when I chill with a penguin, which is also great. Love spending time with penguins. They're amazing, right? Or what is it that, you know, I saw the stuff that you showed me today and I was like, oh, this is very cool. But it's not like I'm looking at these larval fish and being like, oh, but the binturong does that to me. And it's not just the cute factor, because let's be honest, binturongs are weird looking little animals, right? And I don't know what it is, but I find it so fascinating.
Yeah,
you know?
It is. I know. And it's interesting too. I feel very fortunate that I felt like I kind of knew where I wanted to go in life. Even in college, I'm like, the more I took marine biology courses, I'm like, yes, this is what I should be doing. This is so cool. Let's learn about the sea urchins.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. This is going to be such a weird question, but I have a reason for asking, I promise. Did you, like when you were in middle school or high school, do like career day at all? And if so, was marine biologist presented?
No.
Okay.
And also, I'm pretty sure I was supposed to be a garbage person. Garbage collector. I'm pretty sure that's what my test came out and said I was supposed to be.
Amazing. I was going to say, you could still be a garbage person while doing that.
That's true.
I don't know you that well yet. But but I am, so where I grew up, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, weirdly no oceans there.
Yes.
And every year from middle school through high school, we did career day. And every year out of the like 20 options available, marine biologist was presented as one of them.
Okay.
Every year. And when I left school, I just thought like, 20% of the people would become marine biologists. That's just what you did. And I've actually seen like memes and stuff online that said that like, if you are a millennial, you just had marine biologists presented to you, like you could be a firefighter or a garbage person or a marine biologist. Those were like your three options in life. And I was just curious about that because I don't know why that seems to have been a thing that happened for a while.
Yeah. But I actually grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Nice.
So also no oceans, but I was originally from Massachusetts. So I grew up going to the beach regularly, especially Cape Cod and stuff. But I didn't grow up around the ocean, and we actually didn't have a marine biology course in high school until after I graduated, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, it was just sort of what I felt like I wanted to do based on going to the beach.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's very neat. Awesome. So is there anything else that you want to say about the facility here and what y'all do and, anything that I'm missing? Because I don't know.
Let's see. Well, our main focus right now is in the breeding realm, is to work on breeding fish for other institutions. And that is an AZA committee. So it's the Aquatic Collection Sustainability Committee.
Okay.
So we have a larval programs group as part of that. And so it's a bunch of different institutions that have come together and decided that this is a very big focus for us. We want to put a lot of effort into working on different species and being able to share them with other institutions for their exhibits. So that's like our main focus right now. So I just want to give a little plug on that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's actually really cool to be able to ship fish all around the country. We've gotten really good at it. I think we did like 1 minute per box or something.
Okay, so let's just talk about this because you're right. That's actually fascinating.
We're like the FedEx of fish.
How do you box up? I'm picturing. I've seen like Amazon warehouses and stuff, and I'm imagining. I mean, you are in a warehouse. It makes sense. But how do you pack up? When Birch Aquarium out in San Diego needs some fish,
right?
How are you packaging those?
Yes. So we have a box that has a styrofoam cooler in it. Sometimes we have other types of coolers like padded coolers. And we have really thick bags that we fill with water. And you have to have a very specific amount of water that can be enough for the fish, but you also want enough room for oxygen. So you put the fish in the water, you oxygenate the water. We have this little gun on our O2 cylinders that you put the air into the water. And then blow up the bag, just like you would see in like Finding Nemo.
Okay, yeah.
And then you just package them all up really neatly, make sure they can't move around, and put the lid on. And then we ship them on their way.
Wow, that's quite an image.
Yeah, we shipped out 733 look downs last year to all over the country, and we had 0 mortality. Everybody showed up great. So it was really exciting. And the furthest we shipped was Las Vegas, Mandalay Bay.
Nice, yeah.
Which was really cool. I'd love to go there and see them at some point, but. Yeah. So
that is what Vegas is known for.
Yes. They're showgirls now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm just now starting to learn more and more. Like I'm a huge fan of the AZA. Obviously, I only do accredited facilities on the podcast.
Right.
And I've known about SSPs and SAFE programs and all that stuff for years, but I'm only now starting to realize how many committees and subcommittees and just stuff there is where a bunch of nerds who like this stuff get together and become the experts on it and share information. And it's really important. And often it's about stuff that you wouldn't think about, like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some of the other groups that are in that committee are like animal acquisitions. So making sure that we're getting our animals, acquiring our animals in sustainable ways, whether it's aquaculture or whether it's from a vendor who is using best practices when they're collecting and very important things like that. We're also paying attention to welfare and longevity. So how long our animals live on exhibit and sort of how long compared they would live in the wild. It's a bunch of nerds talking about a bunch of really things that we think are cool that are very important. So, yeah. Yeah,
very cool. Yeah. Are there any conservation organizations you'd like to give a shout out to?
Us, obviously.
Okay, well then, great. How can people support what y'all are doing?
Yes.
Your conservation efforts.
Yes, definitely. We have a lot of different conservation initiatives that we're working on, even the right whales, and everything from right whales to tiny larval fish, and obviously the sea turtle rescue program.
Very cool. And then it is time. It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show, but there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
I know. Oh, jeez. Poop.
And it doesn't have to be poop, just anything gross.
Yes. Well, literally. We were talking about the brine shrimp that we grow.
Oh, gosh.
The baby sea monkeys. Sometimes you're accidentally siphoning some water and, you drink it. Sometimes it just happens.
Well,
algae water with copepods in it. It just tastes like the ocean.
I was going to say, anyone who's ever swam in the ocean has probably had all of this in them as well.
Exactly. You just don't know. It's a very concentrated amount of it. So it is kind of a little bit more than that. Sometimes you feel them moving around. I'm just kidding.
See, now that's what makes it gross.
I'm just kidding, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Yes, no problem at all. Thank you for having me.
So there you have it. 3 vastly different looks at just incredibly different sides of just some of what goes on at New England Aquarium. And I don't know about y'all, but I find that they were all just so fascinating in just different ways. And, it has meant so much to me to have New England Aquarium on this podcast. They were a facility that I have dreamed about having on for a long time, and I'm so glad that we were able to connect and finally make it happen. And I have the feeling that the next time I get back up to Boston or Quincy, we'll have some more stuff to talk about because, it turns out that aquarium actually has a whole lot going on. So yeah, the cool news is we're not quite done in New England yet. We have one more episode dropping next Tuesday from my trip to New England. I'll let what it is stay a surprise for now. But that'll make 5 episodes from that little trip. And then then we're almost caught up and to go to Texas, where I spent the last 3 weeks, and we did a couple interviews there. So I'm pretty excited to bring those to you as well. And actually, for those of you who are interested in the musical side of things, I'm going to be hitting the road here just a day after this comes out with my own show, Sun Records Live. And we are going to be playing in North Carolina and Ocean City, Maryland. So if you happen to be in those areas, let me know. Come see a show. And with all that said, I think that's really it. So all I have left to say is thank you, of course, to everyone at New England Aquarium for being so absolutely incredible with this entire process. Thank you also to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. And hey, don't forget, the word credits backwards is Steiderk. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.